Your Life Your Way, where we talk about just that, living life on your terms, feeling safe, being you, guilt-free. Today, I have part 2 of my interview with Stephanie Thompson. We talked about, and are continuing to talk about, pelvic organ prolapse. There was so much to cover. We just could not get it into one episode. So this is part 2, and we're going to talk about, there are so many questions you probably have. What are the risks? Are there preventative measures? And most important, well, they're all important, but also so important is if this has happened to you, how do you live with it? How do you take your life and live it your way when you're dealing with a physical health challenge of this nature? Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get into part 2 of my interview with Stephanie Thompson. Stephanie, I am so happy that we are back together for part 2. We are with Stephanie Thompson, and we are talking part 2 about prolapse, pelvic prolapse. And hopefully you've listened to part 1, which we covered so much, and this is an old word, but absolutely flabbergasted me because I have never heard of this before. And I really want to understand the things that we women go through. We go through so much physically. And hearing about this, I want to do my part to get as much word out about this so that women who are suffering at home alone and afraid to say anything can hear this and know that they aren't alone and can find hopefully some support.
This is my favorite part. Thank you so much for asking me to come back, because I do think it's so important to continue the conversation, as yes, initially something horrible happened to me, but we can move forward, and I can look back in retrospect now and see all the things that were like warning signs or risk factors that if we can share this with your audience now, hopefully they won't have to go through the same things that we did or feel alone or be terrified by it. So I'm so glad to be back and sharing more information from my lived experience.
Where to begin? We've talked about so much. I think maybe, I'm going to let you, I had given you my list of words that I have for cues for me that I just think I want to make sure that we do touch on, and I'm sure you will, but where would be the place that you would want to start off? What would be the first thing you would want to share to begin our conversation today?
Last week was Pelvic Organ Prolapse Awareness Month. So it wrapped up at the end of last week in June. I did a talk at our local library, and it was really interesting to see who came. We had all age groups and demographics there. And the main thing I focused on, Kath, was prevention, because this is the piece where people feel, well, first, like yourself, they feel surprised to hear the word for the first time and understand what a pelvic organ prolapse is. But then when they discover that it's something that can be preventable, not 100%, but there's lots of things that we can do, easy little tweaks within our life to say you're at less risk. They go, wow, why don't we hear about this? It seems so simple, like all of those type of things happen. And then you think, okay, well then let's share it. Let's tell the world how you can potentially prevent it or put yourself the best foot forward. So let's start with, I feel like the causes and the prevention almost go hand in hand in the conversation. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does.
Oh, yes. So the risk factors can be things like, the number one risk factor still is vaginal childbirth and pregnancy, because your hormones change. And when you are delivering babies, the amount of stretching and pressure that your whole pelvis is under is one of the biggest risk factors. So I think for a lot of women, that in itself is huge, because like, well, how do I avoid that? Then I can't avoid, and mind you, by having a cesarean section birth doesn't actually prevent that either.
I remember you saying that, because I had a cesarean section, and I would have thought by going that route, it would be an avoidance of that
Me
trauma.
too. Me too. Until my obstetrician explained to me. So here's my little, what do you call it, caveat, is that I'm not a medical professional at all. I haven't studied this prolapse and all the things. So everything I'm sharing with you today is regurgitated from the experts who I have seen, just to let everybody know. My obstetrician explained to me that by doing the incisions in your lower abdomen, that is all still part of your core and your core strength. So your pelvic floor and your core, which are all of your muscles around your tummy and your back, are all connected. So by weakening when you do an incision from an, if you're having a cesarean section birth, you're still cutting through layers of muscle and fascia and all the things. So it doesn't negate you never having a prolapse if you've also had things like chronic coughing, if you had pneumonia or a bad flu, if you've had chronic constipation, even from childhood. So these things kind of culminate over the years. And things like I found out later on, I had vomiting for a year when I was doing chemotherapy, that is a risk factor. The way that we breathe, people laugh at this, but it's so true. If you have anxiety and the way that we breathe, basically your mechanics of your pelvic floor and your upper breath, if you are causing any intra-abdominal pressure downwards, so if you're like what do we call it? Like a shallow breather, and you're like, yeah, for those who can't see, I'm breathing just in my upper chest here and in my neck. It's causing pressure below. And anything that's causing pressure, gravity is pushing down. So your organs are going down. Everything from underneath can't support it. It's like, oh, there's too much pressure. So everything starts to drop down. Even things like not just the way that we breathe, but if we aren't taking deep breaths, if we aren't letting our pelvic floor relax ever.
May I ask, when you're saying that, because I teach, part of my teaching with students and clients is to breathe from the belly. We need to relearn to breathe from the belly. And, we're taught as little girls to hold that stomach in. And when we hold in that stomach, everything gets real tight and it pushes up, and the breath comes here. And then you add the stresses of life, and we just become consistent chest breathers.
Yeah.
But as we practice that breathing from the belly, and I think it's a psychological thing where, well, my belly sticks out if I breathe like that. But in a sense, it's healthier for many reasons that I'm not even, I'm not even talking about, this being one of them.
Exactly. Wow. Because you're allowing the movement. Your pelvic floor needs to be tense and relax. The relaxing part is almost just as important as the tensing part, because quite often women with prolapse, they get diagnosed and they get recommended to just go and do Kegels. And just go and do your Kegel exercises and feel your pelvic floor and do that. But sometimes that can be counterintuitive. If you've got someone who, for example, is an athlete and their pelvic floor is already very tight because they're constantly working their pelvic floor, then the last thing they need to do is continue to make it tight. They need to relax.
Balance.
Yes, it is all about the balance. That in itself is something relatively newer, what people are talking about in this space. So there's not a lot of direct information I can give on that one, just because I'm still learning it as well. And in terms of relaxing, and it is balanced. So for example, I'll give you a real world example. I do Pilates reformer because I find it is the one thing for me with prolapse that keeps, even though I've lost half the muscle off my pelvic bone, the rest of my muscles, including my glutes and my legs, if they are strong, then I have less chance of feeling my symptoms. And so I stick with that. But there's a tipping point. If I do it too much, then I also feel my symptoms and I have to take a day off. to let my pelvic floor relax and have that elasticity and feel it before going back to do it the following day. It is a very
You have to find, each individual would have to find their own balance of
exactly
what their limit is, their edge.
yes. And I can be really, really honest and say I haven't done set daily Kegels for about a year now, and I let them go because every time I'd go to bed or every time I'd wake up in the morning, right, I've got to do the 10 sets, I've got to hold, I've got to pulse, I've got to do this. And just not having that in my mindset has not changed my prolapse symptoms for the worse. I do other things. And in actual fact, it was during a podcast interview, someone said to me, you're actually still doing them when you do Pilates, but you're probably doing them better because you've got the breath connection with the lift, but you're not hyper focused on them. So it's happening really easy for you. And that's why you're still feeling good. I was like, ooh, that's good. I like killing two birds with one stone.
Can you touch, you just mentioned about because you're lifting with the breath, and there are different, there's that breath going to the gym, and which is more natural in the way that I now teach with, if I'm working with someone with adaptive yoga, or even just bending over and picking up a sock or something, if you have something, because we're taught traditionally in yoga to inhale as you come out. But what I found and what I learned from a teacher I was studying with, that the body tenses, the breath, and you can feel it when you come out, everything is just tense, and then you relax with the exhale. But if you exhale when you come out, everything is softer and it's nicer for your blood pressure and for your heart. Is that similar to what you're saying? How do you adjust your breath with your movement? Which pattern does it follow to make it more comfortable and safe?
So for me personally, the coach that I use for Pilates, there's this little technique, it's called blow before you go. So if you are laying down and you are ready to push off and you're ready to load the muscles, you need to breathe in first, breathe in, then blow out, then push.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Same
that
breath.
so that you are making sure that you've got the breath and it's all smooth and it's gentle, but before you're putting load on, you blow it out. Does that make sense?
So it's within that process of because I've done Pilates, and so if I'm pushing into the mat, I don't do it anymore because my body and Pilates did not get along. That's
It's
another
hard.
conversation.
It is hard.
My spine didn't like it.
Oh no.
But yeah, just I'm weird. Adorable, but weird. But when you push, so it's okay. I just want to be able to have people, because they can't necessarily see us, they can get this and hear the breath and understand, because it is, let's face it, breath is life. We know that. But sometimes we just don't know how to use it properly to keep ourselves safe in various situations.
Correct. Which is why I love following this coach in particular, because she does it from home. Oh, sorry, I can do it from my house and just have her, but she cues you exactly. And then to confuse you, sometimes they switch it up and they say, okay, we're going to reverse the breath this time. And you've really got to concentrate. But I love it because every movement she cues, breathe in. Okay, breathe out and let's go. So I can follow that very easily. If it was up to me to do it, I would be breathing all over the place and I wouldn't know what I was doing because there's so much to concentrate, right?
Yes.
So I can do what I'm told. So that's good. So when we go then into more of a prevention, like honestly, you can't prevent yourself from getting sick. We were just talking about it off air, flu season, but there are things we can be doing during that flu season that I think can assist us to be causing less damage. And I don't mean you're at risk if you have one cold a year or one flu a year. Chronic coughing is usually linked to something like asthma, or if you're a smoker, if you've got chronic bronchitis, I think they're the types of health conditions they're talking about. But even just for me, if you've already got prolapse and you're coughing, the best thing to do is brace yourself either with your hand in your crutch, like on the outside of your clothes, or by sitting on, with your sofa, the edge of your sofa, and just supporting your pelvic floor before you're coughing. So as you're coughing, the prolapse actually yo-yos. It feels like it's coming out, it goes back in, it goes back out, it goes back in. But if you're sitting on something like the sofa, it can't come out too far. It's hard to come out at all because it's supported.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know you're going to have a big coughing moment, I usually sit on the end of my sofa, then cough. But by drinking lots of water, having, I don't know if people are into this, but using aromatherapy oils,
yes,
all the things that soothe you to help prevent the coughing fits, I believe works for me. And so they're the type of things. How do you manage it? Like, you can't avoid getting sick. So you have to manage how you are sick.
Gotcha. Is there any other type of prevention things that you can suggest?
Oh, yeah. I love this question because this is the part where, as a mum, I feel most proud in terms of having conversations with your children about their own anatomy that is age appropriate and good for them. So, for example, I know when my children have like a weekend of birthday parties and they've had a sugar overload, they can become constipated really easily. And so when they do and they're straining on the toilet, I now know that was me as a kid, but no one had the information to tell me not to strain. So I've taught my children that they have a pelvic floor, both of them, my son and my daughter, and to protect it, instead of straining, there's different methods on how to poo. I don't know how detailed you want me to get here, but one's called the moo poo, where you make this kind of mooing sound. I think that was from a physiotherapist here in Australia. But the one I like the most is when we have because we've got little people, we've got little step stools that go up to the toilet.
Yes, I've heard of this recommendation. Yes.
Yes. And so by having your feet elevated and for your body to be in that natural position, you'll see it a lot in Asian countries where they don't have toilets, they squat over a hole because the legs are in the right position. It's funny how I think when I first went to an Asian country, I judged it. I was like, oh, wow, that's weird. That's gross. But in actual fact,
it's healthy.
It's much healthier for your body. It's much better. So I teach my children to put their feet on their stool. And this also helps in childbirth. This is from a childbirth educator. The shape of your mouth is also the same shape as your back end. So if you are clenched jaw, clenched face, and you're stressed all the time, you may have trouble passing a bowel movement. But if you loosen everything here and you make an O shape, like a ooh with your mouth, and you make this noise, it's ooh, and you let the vibration go in your tummy, it just comes out. There's no straining involved at all. And so I now know I can hear my children in the toilet. I'm like, okay, they're stuck. Let's get some more water into them. So just preventative is not a guarantee that my daughter won't have a prolapse, right?
You're on it. Better to be on it. Yes.
I just feel better educated and better equipped for me now. I have to do that and it works for me. Why not share it with them?
Exactly.
In the hope that potentially it won't. So, and I will just want to go back 1 second. The extent of my damage and the extent of my prolapse has been said to have been caused by the use of forceps. There's a lot of debate and it's very political, the use of forceps or to ban forceps. I don't have a personal opinion on them because I'm not a medical professional. And I guess at some point, the medical professionals need to know when they have to be used and when they don't. In my case, I was told they weren't needed to be used. So I was very upset by that they were then. But I don't know. I don't know any better. Maybe they did. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. But when my daughter's ready to have a baby, if that's her choice, then I think I'll be strongly educating her. If potentially they're talking the use of forceps, maybe you could self-advocate and say, no, actually, I'd like to have an obstetric birth. I want to have a cesarean, please. Those type of things. So I think, that could be helpful just because of the degree of my prolapse. And they said it was because of the forceps. It makes sense to me. So I would like for her to not have to have that experience.
Totally understood. I'm sure you will be, if necessary, quite the advocate.
Yeah, if she lets me.
Well, that mother bear syndrome is sometimes kind of hard to stop.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yes.
What is, if we're talking prevention, is there any, and I know you mentioned the sugar and your kids going to a party for a weekend, but is there anything else diet related that can support in a prevention mindset?
Yeah, water is key. I think as humans, we think, we just need 8 glasses of water. Potentially women probably need more, especially because I'm in perimenopause. I feel like if I have more than 8 glasses, if I put some lemon in my water in the morning and it's warm water, I have less chance of having issues with my bowel. It's it's like a very tip the scale. One little thing can change it. Obviously I've tried a whole lot of things. Like I've tried a plant-based diet. I've tried, no processed sugar. I've tried all of these things in the hope that it makes it easier for bowel movements. But honestly, there hasn't been one thing that I've stuck to because it's worked every single time.
So it's really doing that or that research or just trial and error, and know that when you know your body, that when something's changing, if it's not working, then you've got to go back to the drawing board, so to speak.
Yes. Obviously anything with nutrients, anything that comes, I have this
Especially
really simple.
magnesium.
Yeah. Really simple method. Has this food I'm about to eat come from the ground? Is it an environmental source of food, or is it a factory food?
Good point.
And if it's come from the ground, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a better chance of my body liking this and being okay with this compared to something that's come in a plastic packet from a factory. It's that simple. And then if I make the choice to have something sweet or something, I'm like, okay, that, and the ramifications possibly of eating this. And if you're going to eat it, really enjoy it.
I like your mindset.
So I think when it comes to diet and food, I actually think there's something bigger here. I can eat anything now because I'm really focusing on my anxiety, breath work, and meditation.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why?
It's an exciting journey. It's very, very, very new for me. So if I stumble on my words a bit, I'm a bit green. I had this life-changing experience in December last year, and I hope I'm not repeating this from our first episode, but we traveled to New York as a family, and when we were there was nothing in that world that reminded me of my prolapse. Nothing. There were no visual cues. There was no toilet, there's no step stool in the toilet. There was no disabled parking sticker on my car. There was no protein. Like I take like collagen and protein shakes. There was nothing. And probably the 3rd day in, I'd said to my husband, I don't feel it. What is happening? I don't feel these symptoms. And we're walking a fair bit. Am I going crazy? Like I honestly was questioning my sanity because I was like, why am I not? And then I was trying to really black and white the thought process. I'm like, okay, so I'm wearing snow boots and so your footwear for prolapse is really important. How your feet are supported on this earth is all connected to your pelvic floor as well, by the way. I had these beautiful, big, thick snow boots. So I was very supported in my footwear. We were walking a little bit, but we were mainly Ubering everywhere, just knowing I would be symptomatic. We were eating anything and everything, pretzels and all the things you eat in New York and the pasta. I was like, why am I not having issues like at home? And it was really an eye-opening and awakening moment. So when I got back home, within 2 days, I was so symptomatic. And I reached out to our good friend John, and I was like, what is wrong with me? I don't understand this, and I really am confused by this. I hate this. And he said a Jay Shetty quote to me. He's like, location has energy and time has memory. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And it took probably another week to unpack that. And I'm like, okay. So there was nothing in New York that reminded me of prolapse. But when I got back, everything in my life was all how to live with prolapse. It's how I've set myself up to get through each day. So then there was a much bigger question here. Am I creating this in my mind? And that's heavy.
That is very.
Because I know when I look at my body, I'm not. Like my deep core thing is like, you're not making this up, because I can see it. I literally can see it. But I'm like, am I exacerbating how it feels when I get back here? And that was a really hard process. When you learn that, I guess when you surround yourself with everything and all the tips and the tricks on how to live with it, I'm like, well, of course it's my reality, because I've created this reality and I live by this reality. What if I could change that reality? So then I got into meditation and breath work from Alicia, from another one of our beautiful podcast cohort. And then I started to change a bit. I was like, oh, this feels lighter. And to be really clear, the symptoms themselves actually have never changed. How I think and how I feel about them have changed. And it's not as simple as like my husband goes, what, are you just ignoring them? I'm like, I think it goes beyond that, but I can't explain that just yet because it's still so new. So doing little things in my house, like putting away things that are very visually reminding me of this dynamic disability. In my car, I've took the sticker off, and I have just tried to kind of live the New York life back here. And to some extent it's worked, and to some extent it hasn't. I think because you go back into your 9 to 5, you in the same routine. So part of it is being on holiday, you take a break from your life, but part of it is also in your mind and how you, how much energy you put into what that means for you. Does that make sense?
I feel like I'm talking to Joe Dispenza. Have you ever listened to his podcast?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was literally listening to that before I got on here, just him and Jay Shetty on the YouTube. And I just, everything that they say, I'm like, wow, and give me more.
Yeah. You're in the midst of that and exactly what he says, and we've heard forever, the mind is such a powerful thing, but boy, we just haven't even begun to grasp that.
Agreed. When I think, when I know someone who went to one of his retreats in person and said to me, you need to go, they can heal you. I was like, oh, stop it. That's ridiculous. You can't heal a prolapse just by thinking it away. One other person mentioned that to me about 2 years ago, and I was very dismissive, not outwardly because I was respectful during the conversation, but inside my head, I was like, you're crazy. You are very Fruit Loopy. But now I'm like, okay, I'm listening now. And if this is the journey I'm on, but I tell you, it's hard. It's not easy.
It's a practice. Oh yeah. It's a practice.
I used to be that person that said, I can't meditate. I'm too busy. I have too many thoughts. So I am the person that needs to meditate longer. I now know that.
Yeah, saying as if something that says if you can't meditate for 10 minutes, then you need to meditate for 40.
Yeah. Agreed. Yes.
So what types of treatments are there? Because we can't help but think, and we do need medical treatments for severe physical traumas.
Yes. And I don't believe, I don't believe that you can meditate your prolapse away. I'd love to be convinced otherwise, and maybe it will, and maybe we do part 3 and 4 years down when I've a little bit further. But for those who are, I think we did talk about this in the first interview. There are 4 grades. So if you're a grade 1 prolapse, there's a potential that you don't even know. You can't even feel it. It's just that your organs have moved ever so slightly, but generally they stay in the right spot and you don't even know. If you then progress to a stage 2, they say that symptoms can start to come in, like you might feel a fullness or a heaviness or that feeling of a tampon falling out potentially. And then grade 3 and 4, which is kind of where I'm sitting, the organs protrude down the vaginal canal and out of the vaginal opening. If you're a stage 1 or 2, they say generally you can do exercise, diet, lifestyle changes and reverse it back 1. So if you're a 1, you can reverse it back to a 0. If you're a 2, you can reverse it back to a 1, that type of thing. But for women like me who have the avulsion, so the muscle's missing, it's torn off the bone, I know now that I can't get it from where it is back to 0. It's impossible because I can't lift the muscle back up and reattach it magically. It's not going to happen. So therefore, women like me are offered surgery. And the surgery path is, it's a beast, to say the least, to navigate, because I see these conversations daily. You see your gynecologist and they say, just go for surgery, or for me, it was like, go for surgery when it's really bad. And I used to think, well, it's really bad right now. What how bad is this going to get? Like, yeah, it used to scare me thinking, well, if my organs are outside now, where are they going to go? Down to my knees? Like, they're the type of things that you are left thinking. And so I was told I was a candidate for surgery, but I had to have finished having my family, which is where my son came into the picture. He was born. I went back and I said, okay, I'm ready for surgery. And then they did all of this, what they call urodynamic testing. So they fill your bladder, they balloon it out, they do a whole lot of measurements and testing. And then by the end of that, the surgeon said, I'm really sorry, you're actually not a good candidate, because if we do the surgery and we try to do all of these big words, which I can't even remember, there is a chance that within a year, within 2 years, it would relapse. It would all fall, the surgery would, what they would class as fail. And there was a 93% chance that was going to happen. And I was like, I'm all for positive odds, but I'm not up for that. I'm not ready to go through all of that. It's a big surgery, but they downplay it, Kath. They say, oh, yeah, have the surgery and you just need 6 weeks to recover. And after conversations and hearing women speak, I would say a minimum of 12 weeks, minimum, before doing anything that you did in your life previously, like lifting. And I don't mean heavy weightlifting. I mean lifting your washing basket. Very simple things, because so many women in our spaces talk about having surgery and then it fails within 6 weeks, or it fails within 6 months.
Barely even healed yet.
Correct. And then they have generally layers of complexity that come in because of the surgery. So if you had prolapse and you were not incontinent before, so many women report, well, now I'm also incontinent. So I've got this failed surgery, and now I'm incontinent. And it's like, I don't think I could mentally cope with anything else. I feel like I'm just hanging in there as it is. If you want to add something on, as well as recovery, and mind you, at this point when I was offered this, I had 2 kids under 2. So for my husband, he would have to stop working. You can't have a mummy who's recovering for 12 weeks and 2 kids under 2. It's not practical, which is why they say generally women wait a minimum of 7 years with prolapse before they seek radical treatment like surgery.
You said something, and that was on my list of things to ask you that I'm really curious about. and always share what you're comfortable sharing.
Mm-hmm.
But you said, I don't think I can take anymore.
Mm-hmm.
How did you handle the emotion side of it? And just, I can't even imagine what you were feeling.
Neither can I. Honestly, it was very numbing. The whole experience was very out of body numbing in the way that I remember, because I wrote the book and then I had to read it from start to finish just to make sure that it made sense. And I listened back to it. So in your Microsoft Word, you can play it back, your text, and it's robotic. But I listened to the entire thing. I think it took about 5 hours. And I remember sitting back in my chair and thinking, oh, that poor girl. And I was like, what? Hang on. That was me. Oh my gosh. Poor, like, it wasn't like poor me. It was like, it was just a really reality hits going, wow, that happened to me. And I don't feel it. Like I didn't realize it until you read it back. Very interesting, very powerful thing. Very interesting. Coping wise, there are lots of moments where, pardon me, where I have not coped, but it's presented itself in other areas. For example, when my son was born, he had a lot of feeding issues and he had a lot of allergies to the world, gluten, nuts, dairy, wheat, and eggs.
Oh my Lord. That about covers it.
Uh-huh. So I'm trying to breastfeed this baby and not able to eat any of that. And it was hard. And I was hyper vigilant on him and focusing on getting him fed, that I wasn't eating myself. Like I was like, well, I can't eat that. So I just wasn't eating much. But also the stress of it all, I was probably doing all of it onto him. So even though like my physical things, I was just super focused on fixing him, to the point where I just said to someone, I'm not coping. And it was my lovely sister, actually, she hired a lactation nurse or a specialist to come to the house because I found it hard to get out of the house physically. And when she came to visit, she was like an angel. She just was really calm, very quiet, and just very methodically walked me through the process, which is what I needed. Little things like she weighed the baby, then I had to feed him, then she would weigh him again, then I fed him, then she would weigh him again just to see how much he was actually getting, because you can't tell when you're breastfeeding how much are they getting. And she said, yeah, he's probably not getting enough. He probably needs to have some supplement in a bottle. And then we tried formulas and then he was allergic to all of them. And then I just said, I need to go somewhere. I can't do this with my 2-year-old and my husband. And so I checked into what they called a mums and bubs unit here in Australia, where it's like a hospital. It's a wing of a hospital, but it's only mums and new babies, supported by midwives 24/7. And I went in there thinking I was going to fix my baby's feeding issues. And I got there and I rang my mom. I was like, these mums, they've lost the plot. Like they're really unwell. That's not me. It's just my baby. I want to come home. This is crazy. Like I'm not in the right spot. And 3 weeks later, I realized I was in the exact right spot, because mentally I was not okay. I was so unwell. I didn't even see it. And that was huge, because in the morning, they would say, you need to go to group sessions and psychology. And I was like, I don't need that. I am high functioning here. I don't need, just fix my baby. And then by the time at the end, I was like, can we go to session? I need a session. Because I got to unpack my black and white thinking, which we don't get opportunities to ever do that. So while I was trying to fix him, I had to really realize that it's a process of trial and error, and you need to be patient with that. And he might not respond well to something in particular, but then he might to the next thing. So we just have to go through that process, and then having the right support there 24/7. Like your baby, you feed your baby and then he projectile vomits. It's really stressful.
My Connor used to do that when he was first brought home. It used to scare the life out of me. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So while it was tough to be away from my daughter, it had to happen. Halfway through, they let you go home for a weekend just to see how things are going. And it all fell apart within an hour, because generally they like to work with the partner or the husband as well to make sure that when you go home, the patterns are different. Like, you need to change your thinking. If you're so stressed and anxious, to not be anxious, you've got to change. So then he came up and we did, a session for a day. And then after the third week, I was ready to go home because I missed my daughter so much. But it was also it looked very different for us now. That level of communication, even with prolapse, I was able to say things to him that I was never able to say before. And so that mental health side of things is your emotional health is so important. And
Yes.
yeah.
And I'm so glad you're being open and honest about this, because I don't know how it is over in Australia, but I know here we have this stigma around mental health. You just don't talk about it. You just kind of brush it, and it so needs to be brought. And I think it slowly is in certain ways being more brought to the forefront, but not nearly enough. And
I agree.
It is okay to seek support, to seek help, to seek guidance. It is so important, and it's perfectly a fabulous thing to do if that's what someone feels is right. And even if they might not feel it's right, try it any right person for you, and try, get that support and get that help. It's just too important.
Agreed. And I think if I just want to go back for 1 second, because I just did think about this, when you were talking about treatment options for prolapse. So yes, surgery is kind of like the end game. There are many shades in between where women can get support. So things like a pessary, which is a silicone device. There's so many different shapes and sizes that can be fitted by your gynecologist to support. So you insert it in, it supported your organs so that you can do things like your daily exercise or just your daily functioning, walking around. For me personally, I haven't been able to find my match. I've tried a lot and a lot of different sizes, but because of the avulsions, they can't stay in. So I've had a lot of trouble with them. Some people say that they are an absolute life changer, game changer. So it would be remiss of me not to mention that, because it's not all doom and gloom. I think my case is common, but it's more rare. So I would definitely recommend, if anyone's feeling symptoms or they suspect they've got a prolapse, to go and see a women's pelvic floor physiotherapist or your gynecologist and ask them about pessaries and get support that way. You don't have to always have surgery first. They often offer it first, but you don't have to have it first.
It's so, having a baby, your hormones are just so wild anyways. And then you have this trauma on top. So, I like I said, I can't even imagine what you were feeling, but it's a lot. And I had shared this with you. I'm not going to say who. I told you who it is, but I'm not going to say who on here because it's not my story to tell to the world.
Sure.
But I had never, since I heard about this, I learned this from you. I had never heard about it before, nor have I met anyone before. And since you and I talked, I had a chance to speak with someone, and she mentioned that, she has that experience. And I was blown away. Women aren't talking about this.
No, it's not dinner time conversation. Honestly, you say the word vagina at the dinner table, everyone thinks you're mad. They do. It's
don't want to say those private words.
If you go back and you really think about history and women in history, like menopause was hysteria and women were going crazy and they were burnt at the stake. Like this is how severe it is. This is why men still balk when they hear those words, and women, like, seriously, we ourselves get embarrassed and find it hard to say the word,
Try to get
because of
people to
it.
say the word period. Oh, God.
Historically, we've been taught to cover it up, and it's going to take a lot of unpacking. And I hope that, my daughter, by the time that and I love that social media is talking about it a lot. I don't know if it's just because I'm in the space, but I see a lot of young influencers talking about periods, talking about pregnancy, talking about sex in a very, feels like a very safe and respectful way,
Good.
That's which
good
is
to
very
hear.
different to what we had, underground conversations. And
If any, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very proud to see that, because I hope that by the time she's ready, she can have that conversation at the dinner table. I know my husband isn't going to balk at it because he's so desensitized to it now. But before me, he has a mum, obviously, but he hasn't never been around sisters or cousins or women. So they've never had those conversations. His mum went through all of her menopause and stuff very alone. No one.
Yeah, that's another whole podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he now knows that. So I know that she could bring it up and we wouldn't even batter an eyelid. And that's really good. I'm really, really proud of that.
And kudos, because it really does. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It is a natural part of life, and it does, need to be talked about more. Absolutely. All of this.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to be a woman, but because of our gift of life, we do experience some extra special things. Let's put it that way.
Yes. And interestingly, the people who make the decisions about this, Kath, in, mainstream media are middle-aged white men who say no to vaginas, no to periods, no to vulvas. Holy moly, no. They don't allow in print media. They don't allow it on TV. I know that our Australian company here called Modibody, which they do period underpants, fought for a decade to be able to have an ad on TV to support women with their periods. And they weren't allowed to use real blood. It had to be. But yet you can have a horror movie where there's like every bit of gore. And especially if it's war, you can see someone's literally their guts hanging out. But for women, because the men are making the decisions, and that needs to change too.
Well, another podcast I think we'd love to have is women taking over the world. It's so overdue. Can you share, would you share, if you don't mind, living day to day? And obviously it has changed just basically on what you've already talked about. We can see and we can hear that it has changed since the very beginning to today. But how do you ebb and flow when you have, you might be feeling well in the morning and then all of a sudden you don't feel well in the afternoon? How do you manage that?
The best way is to share a real life narrative, I guess. Even as of yesterday, it is the school holidays here. So in the morning, knowing that I am at my possible best, we took the children out to a place like a play space, and they met up with school friends. And for the first time ever, I got to sit with the mum outside and talk, and as an anchor point, and the kids could go and come back because they had an older child with them. And I was like, this is beautiful, not having to shadow my children, because if I go, and usually I walk around with them, I maximum an hour with sitting in between. I'm like, okay, mummy's done. I always tell them I got a sore bottom, which is weird, I guess, because even me, I don't want to have to tell them my prolapse is sore, which is stupid because I'm so open to everyone. But I don't think that they're age appropriate to understand what a prolapse is yet, right? Being 5 and 6 years old. And so because we got to sit, they got to have a lot longer. But by lunchtime, even just the simple things like going from the seating to the cafe to get lunch, which is only 20 meters away, and back, going in a couple of times just to make sure they were okay, I was like, all right, I'm done. So we get in the car, we come home, and I lay flat on the lounge room. We put a movie on the TV. They were playing with their little guinea pigs. and we chill out for at least an hour, feet in the air. I do breath work, I reconnect, and then I get up and get afternoon tea. Then I sit a lot. So from afternoon onwards, the kids will see me sitting at the table, sitting on a stool at the kitchen if I'm cutting up vegetables for dinner, say, but I'm sitting a lot, sitting at dinner. Sometimes it's really hard to shower at night because of standing. So I jump in the bath because it can sit. And then we as a family, our day wraps up at 7:30 for everyone. We put the children to bed and my husband and I put ourselves to bed because I can no longer be vertical in this world after that time. Everything is so pressure felt and everything is at the bottom. There's no point me staying up watching TV, or there's no point trying to do anything else because there's so much pain involved in that. You just have to lay down and reset. So then that's what we do. I have this beautiful opportunity every single day to hit a reset button. And at 7:30, I press the reset button and I wake up like this morning and feel good again. And we do it every single day. Now,
And it sounds beautiful.
Well, here's the magical thing. I used to call that Groundhog Day. That's a really negative connotation for something that is actually a freaking gift. Now, through meditation and breath work, I've been able to see you are so lucky to have that opportunity every single day to wake up in the morning and feel good for a moment. So enjoy that moment. And then you get it again the next night. It's like this ongoing gift. So see how I've just shifted from my life is in a rat wheel and it's horrible and it's blah, 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 to, oh my God, what are you going to do in the morning? You lucky thing. And I honestly believe that now. And so that is my gift. And that's where I really want people, women who are experiencing prolapse, to get to this point. Because my God, it feels good. And it feels good. Honestly, yesterday at 2:00 in the afternoon, it actually feels really nice to rest for an hour. I think all of us could take a little rest in the afternoon because we are just go, 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 go,
Yes.
go. And then
Yes.
we're exhausted.
Yeah. And it's not a necessary way to live life.
No, it's really not. The more I can slow down my mindset and my body, the better it is for everyone involved. Everyone's calmer. No one's yelling.
You seem to have some other magic going on there too, because you said the whole family, from what I'm gathering from what you're saying, this is a magical experience from the whole family, because you said the whole family calms down and calls it a day at 7:30. But you had to work to bring that family energy together in that manner and have that support as a family team. So because yes, you have the trauma, you've gone through this physically, but it's the whole family also has their level of prolapse that they living
do. 100% they do. My children have a mum that can't chase after them. So if you want to play games like that, you got to get dad or someone else. They have a mum who I used to say can only function part of the day, but can highly function part of the day and then has to have an adjusted rest of the day. My husband has a wife. It's really hard to be intimate with. That's the reality of it all. And that's hard because mentally I know that there's other ways to be intimate other than intercourse. We're not there yet. Like we still have young children. And I think anyone with young children, you go through there's a phase, but that I'm looking forward to working on that as well. So everyone has an adjusted life now. You're exactly right. Even our social life, we were so social. We used to go out all the time. We used to, love dancing together. And we don't do that anymore.
You dance in the morning somewhat, a little bit?
Well, yes, we have music on. So our morning household routine is no TV anymore, but music. And music is magic because it just lifts your vibration. It lifts the mood of the entire house, depending on what you put on, of course. And it just makes if everyone's singing, they're happy. Unhappy people don't sing. So if
That's a good point. I haven't thought
if you
about that.
and they don't whistle either. No one sings and whistles if they're depressed. So you know that if people are singing in your house, it's the right thing. You're doing the right thing. And funny enough, the other night, my daughter wanted to have a dance party in nighttime. She loves dancing too. And I said to my husband, I don't know if I can do this, but I did it. I lasted a song and then I sat down and just sat danced, like I just sat in my chair. I sat on the floor actually, and I still moved my body. She still saw the joy in my face, but I couldn't physically stand up and do it. So you're just tweaking things.
Yes.
Yeah, along the way. But I will say we've missed out on a lot. I do remember, here's a funny story for you. One of my girlfriend's 40th birthdays. And it was on a rooftop bar, but there's no lift. There's only like multiple sets of stairs. And obviously starting at 8:00 at night or something, I was like, I can't do it. I am too heavy for my husband to carry. And also I'm too proud to be carried upstairs. Like, this is ridiculous in a very busy bar. And so I rang the venue and I said, surely you have a waiter. You've got a dumb waiter, because there's no way that you lift everything up to the 3rd floor. Can I sit in it? And they said, no. I'm like, okay. So we had to miss out, but I'm always thinking, how can you adjust this so that you can participate? How can you do this? And while that one didn't work out, if people invite us to things at night, we really have to think about it. Yeah,
I can understand that.
Dinner parties are good.
Pardon me? Dinner parties. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm good at those.
Or wonderful brunches,
Yes.
if it's on a weekend. Absolutely.
Yes.
Tell us about your book, please.
Oh, The Day My Vagina Broke was my first book. And it's what they don't tell you about childbirth. It was never meant to be a book, Kath. It was never meant to be published. All it was actually meant to be was me expressing the life event that happened. Like, I was literally going to write, Dear Diary, this really crappy thing happened, the end. And I was going to lock it away forever, just to get it off my chest and just to have resolve. And then it was my husband that said to me, so I've watched you write this book at 4:00 every morning, because we had 2 kids under 2. And then he said, and now you're not going to publish it? Okay. So you're going to let other women go through this alone, just like us?
Oh, he's wonderful.
You're going to make them suffer just like us? I was like, ouch. But it hit so hard that then I was determined to get it published, because it'd be such a disservice if I didn't. So this is really where what I call the birth of the brave new era of me, because I had to tell the world about my vagina, and it was broken, and I felt broken, but I was also scared of being judged, because I wasn't going to be a full capacity mom or a full capacity wife. And I felt scared, but I did it anyway. And that's what I feel is the true definition of brave, is when you feel scared, but you do it anyway. And you're open to all of that. I opened myself to all of that. That vulnerability was at the highest it's ever been. I did it, and it didn't result in anything too scary. In actual fact, only positive things have come from it, from our perspective, and getting messages and hearing from other women that they didn't have to feel alone. And my story could be their story. They hadn't told anyone. That's very impactful and very powerful. So I'm glad I did it. I then wanted to write volume 2, The Day My Vagina Was Fixed. That was the plan. And when that didn't go to plan, I was got very depressed, because I was like, well, if I can't be fixed, is this my life? Which then the second publication came from that. And that is an ebook, because I wanted women to have access to all the tips and tricks for living with prolapse. That's what it's called, in the palm of their hand. So if they are on holidays and they're stuck on the bathroom, there's a section there on how to poo. If they are wanting to be intimate with their partner, it's on their phone. It's right here. You don't have to hold a book up and tell the world you have prolapse. It's private. And that was the reason for the ebook for the second one. And it's just a very helpful guide, and then also has reflective questions at the end of each chapter, because they're the things that I wish someone would have asked me so that I could reframe my thinking. And I'm hoping that when women read it, they get a bit of a shift. So it's not Groundhog Day, it's the gift of rest that helps them get up and live their life to the fullest again the next day. So that was the whole idea about that one. And that's we relaunched that one just in June, in Pelvic Organ Prolapse Awareness Month, and it's been really popular and had great feedback. So I feel like that is my volume 2. It's not fixed, but it's the best we can do.
Wonderful. And we will have the links and information available to access both books.
Sure.
And to also access you, because you are Brave Mama, and you have, a whole host, obviously a whole batch of information and support. And can you, people might say, well, you're in Australia, I'm here in the United States. How you're still able to direct them as to where they might go? Because
oh, sure. Yes, absolutely.
might be a question on someone's mind.
Yes. So we obviously have the podcast. It's got three seasons of information for everything for prolapse, from your head to your toe, literally. And so people can access that at any time. We've interviewed lots of people from the States, where there'll be links in those episodes and where you can go locally as well, because there are limited, like there's a limited number of prolapse spaces, but there's a really big, beautiful one in the States from the founder, Sherry Palm, and it's called APOPS. I'll give you the link to that to share, because I think there's probably close to 30,000 women in that one now, mainly based in the US, but we've got about 50-50. There's about 50% of our women from Australia and about 50 from the US. So we, in our free Facebook group, I say, so if you post a question there, I'm located in Delaware. Is there anyone who knows about a physiotherapist? There's a really good chance that someone in that space will be able to help you, because I wouldn't know, but there are other women. We're there as a close community who can help. Yeah.
Wonderful. I kind of thought so, but it's better to hear it out loud for me.
Sure.
Well, this has been wonderful. I'm so glad. So I knew we had to do a part 2, because there was still so much that we needed to cover and talk about. And I can't thank you enough for being here and just giving your energy and your love and your strength. It's very empowering. It really is.
And it's my absolute honor. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all your listeners, because I hope I can help. Like you said, you discovered someone had prolapse you never would have thought. So start the conversations, ladies. Ask someone in your close, trusted circle. Hey, I listened to this podcast about prolapse. See what comes up. Very interesting.
That's exactly what I did. And it wasn't to get anything. I was just sharing. And I was hit with it. It was like, wow. But yes, thank you. Yes, the conversation, don't be afraid to talk. We need to stop being afraid we need to stop hiding our voice. We need to be heard. Absolutely.
Yeah, and stop saying sorry, right?
Yes. That's another whole podcast.
I love being your guest. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that you found some inspiration from Stephanie and some answers. And I hope you're not taking away fear. Having the knowledge of what could happen. We don't want to live in fear. We don't want to think that, oh my God, now, I can't get pregnant and have a child. We don't want to go to these extremes, but the more information, the more knowledge we can have to take better care of ourselves and prepare our body to the best that we can for pregnancy and carrying a healthy child, the better we will all be. But if you have found that, you had something happen and you are dealing with a physical challenge, or maybe you are now, but maybe there was something, this childbirth, as I said in my initial about what else are we not talking about in childbirth, whether the mom ends up having a physical health challenge, whether the child ends up having a physical health challenge. There needs to be support, conversation had, support given, found. And there are so many times, we know this, that, and not all, but so many doctors don't listen. They don't hear us when we speak. It is our responsibility to keep moving forward, pushing forward with wanting answers, doing the research, finding the right people that will hear us and work with us. Stephanie can help on your journey. She can't give you, 100% of all your answers, but she can certainly guide you to find yours. Please reach out to her. Her information will be in the show notes. I do wish you all the very, very best. I'm so honored to have you part of the Your Life, Your Way community. You can always reach out if you have questions, concerns, comments, topics you would like to have covered that I have not. You can reach me at kmyourlifeyourway@gmail.com. kmyourlifeyourway@gmail.com. And I would also like to just give a shout out that the Relationship Rescue Summit is coming August 7th through the 11th. I have pulled together an amazing group of speakers that are going to address some unique areas that we might not necessarily think of as affecting our relationships. And I mean all relationships. Usually we think of that one-to-one relationship, but I'm talking about everything, everybody that crosses our path, that's in our life on a regular basis or comes in and out, relationships, and especially the most important one, that relationship with ourselves. So that will be coming. You can please feel free to register. You will find the registration and additional information at www.kmyourlifeyourway.com. www.kmyourlifeyourway.com. And you will find the landing page there that you can gather more information on each speaker, the in-depth topics, and how to register. It is a free summit. And don't worry if you cannot connect with each speaker at the time that their information drops. You will have access to the replays. Again, thank you so much. I wish you so much joy and peace and many blessings.